because I still think the NASDAQ 100 has another probably 20% downside before it finds any sort of real level of stabilization.
Hello and welcome to Wealthy Value. In today's video, Chief Market Strategist of InTheMoneyStocks.com, Gareth Soloway updates about Bitcoin's market performance, chances of hitting a crypto bottom, and volatility in the markets following Fed's rate hike. Make sure to stick around till the end of this video where Gareth Soloway reveals whether or not we should witness a recession anytime soon. If you like the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the post notifications. Let's dive right into the video.
So anytime this is the way a lot of people think the crypto bottom is close to being in. What you just described tells me it's not, right? Crypto bottoms, just like stock market bottoms, are based off psychology. And the way bottoms are put in is when everyone is too scared to even think about buying it. We saw that in 2018 and into 19, where no one wanted to touch it. I still remember vividly, in 2017 when it was hitting those all-time highs of like 20,000, CNBC had the ticker of Bitcoin, right at the bottom of their screen every single day. By mid-2018, you couldn't even find it. It wasn't even discussed on CNBC. Those are indicators that you've gotten close to a bottom. When you talk to people and they're like, oh my goodness, I don't even know if Bitcoin or crypto will survive, that's the time you want to go in. So just clearly on the charts too, you have to look at this chart and you can see this bearish flag, and I've talked about this for months, that this was a bearish flag pattern, and you can clearly see it started to break to the downside now. So your next stopping point for me of major support will be this 29-ish thousand, which was your low from 2021. And if it breaks that, then I think you're headed towards 20,000, which is the 2017 high. So I'm still in the camp, as much as I love Bitcoin long term, and I really think it is going to become the digital gold. If we look at cycles, Bitcoin has tended to make an 80 to 85% correction in each of its down cycles, right? So you have to think that maybe even 20,000 is too high of a target. My hope of it holding or getting around 20,000 and bottoming is that I do think there's more adoption, and I'm hopeful that more big money starts to accumulate that maybe keeps it from really doing a full 80 to 85%. Yeah, so it has been a wild, wild week. I mean, you go back to the Fed decision, we had that monster short squeeze rally after the Fed came out with that 50 basis point hike. We had Jerome Powell coming out with the press conference. He seemed to be not so super hawkish, but very hawkish, which was just a slightly better than the market anticipated. The market seemed to kind of breathe a sigh of relief. And then that all went out the window the next day. And I think the kicker for the next day was the productivity numbers. So the economic numbers came out with productivity numbers much weaker. And what we ended up seeing is that, basically productivity slipping with high inflation is a recipe for stagflation. I think the market is really starting to get freaked out about that. So we've gone down heavily. We saw 5% on the NASDAQ yesterday. Today, another down day. And again, it could stretch into next week. So I think that, again, we see rates continuing to go up. The 10-year is now, I think, around 3.15, which is a remarkable move. And again, it's going to slow the economy. There's no doubt about it. I think by the end of this year, early next year, we do have a recession on our hands. Yeah, so I think it was just slightly, like maybe 25% of that number, kind of a realization that, hey, there may be an issue where growth is starting to slip and you still have high inflation. And then the other side of it, I think, was that the market initially breathed a sigh of relief after it was only 50 basis points and kind of it would stay the course. But then the market was like, but wait a minute, staying the course means another 50 and then another 50. And they have to continue doing this to get inflation under control. And that realization means that, again, the economy is going to have to slow. I mean, that's what rate hikes do. It sucks money out of the system, and it's going to slow dramatically. And the market doesn't have a lot of confidence in the Fed after they waited too long to kind of hike rates. And then if you go back historically, even back in 2008, 2009, the Fed was on the sidelines for way too long when things were collapsing before finally stepping in. So the Fed does not have a good track record of kind of doing things just right. They always overdo one way or the other. And the market is now definitely worried that they're going to overdo rate hikes and cause us to be in recession. And then how do they get us out of recession, right? They can't print money if inflation is still even 5%. So again, that puts us in another conundrum. Yeah, I mean, the dollar being strong, it has been one heck of a run. And if I can here, let me show my chart here so we can kind of gauge what the charts are showing us. So, I mean, it has been a meteoric run in the dollar. We've seen the dollar versus the yen just have this crazy move as well. The one thing I will say is that the dollar has hit resistance going back to this high, going back to 2017. So there is a chance that the dollar could be stalling here. You want to see a pullback in the dollar. Again, the biggest issue is, and this, by the way, shows how broken the system is, when you have the bond market making moves like it's doing, when the dollar is making moves like it's doing, when the stock market is dropping 5% in a day like it's doing, it's telling you something is broken here. And this is where catastrophic events can come out. I mean, if you go back to 2008, the financial crisis, where banks failed, things like this started to happen, where these crazy moves occurred, and then it put situations in play that should not ever have been in play. So, we have to be very vigilant. I'm sure the Fed is monitoring the situation very, very closely. But the dollar itself, major move. It is into resistance. It's stalled here. If we zoom in, you can see it's kind of has stalled there. But my concern is this making a bull flag? This kind of is consolidation that could break out. So that's going to be even more an issue. Also, a strong dollar hurts companies, like the earnings from companies like IBM as well. And that also can be hurtful to the stock market, because if it brings in multiples because of that, that could be an issue. I think that's really important to kind of gauge it too, because we're still at such elevated levels due to the pricing and the liquidity that was injected into the system due to COVID. And here, if we zoom in on this chart, I mean, so here you can see this is where we are, and we're really, in the scheme of things, not that far off of the all-time highs. You're talking about 479, we're at 408 now, 409. So we're down about 70 points on the spiders, which again is shy of 20%. But then if you zoom out on this chart, here's your longer term trend. This is just a normal trend of expansion, right? This isn't even factoring into recession, the potential for recession. Here was your COVID collapse, and then here was the market on steroids on that, all that crazy liquidity pumped into the system. So we haven't even come back into the normal growth range of the market, let alone if a recession does hit later in the year that probably pushes us maybe back to the COVID lows. So again, it's a market where at the at the very minimum, I think we're going back to like this pre-COVID high, which puts us down another, $60, $70 on the SPY. In the worst case, if you do get a recession end of year, I think we're retesting the COVID lows down at 220 on the spiders. Yeah, so you certainly have seen it become very sticky. It seems like $95 is your base. Your high end at least was up to 130. Now your secondary high is down at 115 to 116. Right now we're trading just underneath 110. So I'm hopeful that at least we're making lower lows. So high, lower low, lower low. I'm in the camp that who knows what happens in the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks for oil. But I think if your outlook is 2 to 3, 4 months out, I think oil is down sharply from here. Short-term target is 85 for me. And then by midterms, I even think, and that, so some people that might be short-term, but that's more midterm for me. By midterm elections in November, I think you're at $75 a barrel. The reason I come up with that is, number one, we actually topped out on the monthly chart with that spike right here. So this is just a remarkable chart. But you can clearly see that if you connect a trend line from this low to this low and then right here, all right, and this one, by the way, is when it went negative, which was just insane. And then you take a parallel line and stretch it up, you get a perfectly parallel line that marks off this 130. So right away when we hit 130, I said, okay, it's done going up. Now you're kind of having this sticky price. But again, if you think about everything the Fed is doing by raising rates, what do raising rates do? It slows the economy. What is the war in Ukraine and supply chain having an issue? It's basically causing inflation. That means people can afford less goods. It's slowing the economy. I mean, all these things are slowing the economy, and you have to think about the demand side of oil. So if people drive less, if they fly less, if they buy less goods, there's less demand for oil, and that will cause oil to come in. So I do think that if you have a mid to longer term, 6 to 12 month horizon, you'll see oil down significantly from these levels, even though most people will tell you. I mean, I was listening to CNBC today and everyone was like, oh, you got to be in the oil stocks. That's the only place to be. When you hear that, and I'm telling you this from experience, it's usually the time to sell into that buy pressure. So just be aware of that.
So do you agree with Gareth Soloway's views on crypto bottoming? Tell us in the comments. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you soon with the next video. Thank you so much for watching.